I started to initially take this comment as a dumb-ass racist comment, but I'm deciding to take the higher road and say that this is not exactly what you meant, because text often doesn't demonstrate tone or point of view. But in my video where I talked about a lot of African Americans being ashamed of their African ancestry, this gentleman of very, very light melanation asked the question, why are you not ashamed of it? Would you mind elaborating? Now, since he said, would you mind elaborating? This is why I'm taking the higher road on this conversation. So if he didn't mean it to be racist or mean, but just strictly asking the question, please, those who follow me, do not kill this man in the comments, nor go to his page and harass him. Okay? I'm asking you nicely not to do that. We'll see what his response is, because maybe he didn't understand how it comes across when you're of less melanation, talking to someone of heavy melanation. But here's the gist of it. It would be ridiculous to be ashamed of an ancestry that goes back thousands and thousands, millions of years ago, for anyone. Because every people group on the planet, almost every people group on the planet, has suffered some level of indignity, some level of slavery, some level of being controlled, of being oppressed, some level of being defeated in battle, losing their empires, so on and so forth. Every people group, I'm going to go with my every. I don't use finite terms often, but I'm going to use a finite term. Everyone, every people group, some point in time in history, has suffered this. The very Europeans that conquered Africa and India and the Americas are the very same ones that at one point were conquered by Africans and Mongolians, and even their own selves within their own people groups. There are African people groups that have conquered each other. There are American people groups that conquered each other. It has happened all throughout history. So why should I be ashamed of something that is just something that happens in history? It is not shame that you should feel, but it is, what can I learn from those previous civilizations to ensure that it does not happen again? You see, many people think that white supremacy is based truly on supremacy, when in fact, it's more about not losing the position of power that they hold right now. You see, no group would willingly give up their power to another group that they have oppressed. No group would ever willingly do this. Even if they weren't giving it up to a group that they oppressed, no group would just willingly give up their power. Unless you see ultimate defeat in your fighting, much in the same way when Darius came into the Babylonian capital of Babylon, the people saw that there was no point in fighting, that they would be decimated. So Darius conquered the city-state of Babylon without any force whatsoever. So that's the only time. But I am not ashamed of that my ancestors were outgunned. The technology that they faced was much ahead of what they had, and that they were conquered. People are conquered all the time. There are time frames. My father's family, for instance. My father's family comes from the Mali. The Mali was one of the greatest empires on the earth at one time. One of the most well-known person was Mansa Musa, who was the richest man in the world. I'm not saying that my father's family is from Mansa Musa's direct line. He's not. But what I'm saying is that they were part of, as Dogons, they were part of the Mali Empire. Once a great empire, now a small country. It happens. Because there are opportunities for you to take pride in the achievements of your culture. But even within defeat, there are opportunities to take pride in your culture. How many other cultures could have survived the brutality of the American slavery? You see, the slavery that was in Rome was brutal, but it was nowhere near as brutal as the slavery in the Americas. In Roman slavery, you were allowed to keep your religion. You were allowed to keep families. You were allowed to earn income so that you can become free of that. In Islamic slavery, you were allowed to do all those same things I just mentioned about the Romans. In the ancient Hebrew slavery, there were opportunities to purchase your freedom. Now, in all of those, there was the perpetual slavery of chattel slavery as well. But it was nowhere near as brutal, and slaves often had rights in those situations during those time frames. But in the Americas, the brutality of that, with my ancestors fighting through it, suffering through it, so that I could be here today, I take pride in the fact that they maintained. For my indigenous American relatives who endured the Trail of Tears, who endured Europeans spreading diseases that they weren't accustomed to, and the overwhelming majority of their civilizations being destroyed by disease, being destroyed by guns, being destroyed by their religion, but they still maintain and they still are here. All of them needed to be strong in order for me to be here now. So I take pride in that. Therefore, I will never be ashamed of any of the struggles that my ancestors went through. I will applaud them for making it through the struggles, and I applaud them for all the heights that they have reached previous to the transatlantic slave trade or the so-called discovery of America. So that is why I am not ashamed. I will never be ashamed, nor should anybody be ashamed of their ancestry to the point where they carry the shame themselves. Today we talk about critical race theory, CRT, and people not wanting their children to feel ashamed about their ancestors who were participating in this American barbarity, this American slavery, this Jim Crow, and all those sorts of things. It is not intended to make them feel ashamed. It is intended for them to become aware of what their ancestors did, how vile it was, so that it is not repeated again, so that they can teach the next generation and the next generation to ensure that it is not repeated again, so that they understand the atrocity. And if you want to see something like that that has worked, European wise, if you go to Germany, the German people are not ashamed of what they did during World War II, but they have learned that it is an atrocity to be and think in that mindset, which is why they teach it so that their children won't repeat it. When you go and look at Rwanda, they are not ashamed of the genocide that happened in the mid-90s, but they teach it so that their children won't repeat it. That is the purpose of understanding and teaching and knowing history. So that's why I'm not ashamed, and never should be. But y'all have a great day. Remember, you got to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journeys, good vibration.